We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The top business stories live from the Sky newsroom. The Chancellor refuses to rule out slashing the amount savers can put into a cash ISA. Lloyd's banking group sets aside more than £1 billion to cover the fallout from the car finance scandal, but is it enough? Plus, why fried chicken is taking over the UK high streets. Very good afternoon and welcome to Business Live with me, Tara McCaffrey. We're going to start with what looks like a plan to cut the amount savers can put into cash ISAs. There have been reports that Rachel Reeves is planning to slash the limit from £20,000 to just £4,000. At the moment, savers can pay 20,000 quid a year into multiple ISAs, but there have been calls to simplify the system. Question about what a cut would mean, the Chancellor failed to rule out the possibility of it.
It's really important that we support people to save to achieve their aspirations. At the moment, there is a £20,000 limit on what you can put into either cash or equities. But we want to get that balance right. I do want to create more of a culture in the UK of retail investing, like what you have in the United States, to earn better returns for savers and to support the ambition to grow the economy, creating good jobs right across the UK.
There you go, that was Rachel Reeves speaking a little earlier. Let's speak to Madeleine Ross, who is the Telegraph's money reporter. Very good afternoon to you, Madeleine. Just before we get into the rights and wrongs of all of this, or the possible rights and wrongs, just talk us through what the Chancellor's alluding to there. She talks about the system at the moment being quite complex.
So there are four main types of ISA at the moment, and that's a lot of choice for savers. But the main ones are stocks and shares ISAs and cash ISAs, and it's cash ISAs that are potentially coming under fire here. Rachel Reeves is looking for growth, and she's checking under all of the sofa cushions, and she's decided, and some fund managers have decided, that this might be a place in which we can encourage more investment from savers in the UK. So that's where this is coming from, and this has been around for a few weeks. There were rumours that cash ISAs might be completely scrapped, but now it seems that at a meeting yesterday, one of the big ideas was that it would be reduced from this £20,000 a year limit to this £4,000 a year limit. So that's what's going on. It's complete speculation at the moment. There are no guarantees, but it is interesting that Rachel Reeves has refused to rule it out. So it could be something that's on her mind for an upcoming.
It's always interesting in many ways what the Chancellor doesn't say rather than what she does, but there is a sense of direction, isn't there? And this is a lot of money. I read in the 2022-2023 tax year, it's some £294 billion.
It's a lot of money, but also 18 million people are estimated to have these cash ISAs. So across those pots, there's not always that much in them. And the warnings from experts today in reaction to this news have been that this is going to hit those people hardest. You know, it's the people with a few £1,000s, it's pensioners, it's those saving for a mortgage, ready to buy a house, that are going to feel the impact of this. Whereas those with huge stocks and shares ISAs, and the top 25 have nearly £250 million stashed away in those stocks and shares ISAs, won't feel this, because this is a measure targeted at getting more people investing. And some suggest that that's not fair.
But ultimately what the government are trying to do here is boost the City of London, isn't it? They're trying to get kind of more retail investors like you see in the United States, trying to get people like you and I and people watching at home to invest much more in the stock markets.
Yes, and I think the key question there is whether the government really has the right to tell savers that they should be investing rather than holding money in cash. At the end of the day, it's a personal choice, and there are tax breaks that are equal at the moment. So I think for lots of savers who aren't prepared to take that risk because they don't want to, because the project that they're saving for is maybe a holiday next year and not something 10 years away so that they could ride out any waves in the stock market, they're going to be slightly worried about that. the conflict here is between those who want investment and therefore risk, and those who want solid, steady savings, which they can rely on, and that the only thing they've got to worry about is the inflation eroding the value against the interest they're being paid. So there's a real conflict there between the interests of savers, which might not look like what the city's interests are, of course.
OK, Madeleine, really interesting stuff. And as you say, it's a story that we need to keep across because it does look like there's a direction of travel here, if you like. Madeleine Ross there from The Telegraph. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Lloyd's banking group has reported a 20% drop in profits, hit by the amount it is earmarked for remuneration related to an investigation into the mis-selling of car finance. Lloyd's has already set aside £450 million to cover the car finance costs, but has announced an additional £700 million. It follows a court ruling that paying a commission to car dealers who had arranged loans without disclosing the amount or terms to the borrowers was unlawful. Well, let's speak to Sam Ward, legal director at the law firm Sentinel, who is with us. Sam, very good afternoon to you. But before we get into the exposure that Lloyd's might well have, just talk us through what is at the heart of this. I tried to explain it there. This is about mis-selling, really, fundamentally, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about when you go into a car dealership, you expect the car dealer to be earning the bulk of their money from the sale of the car and not actually from selling the car finance, which is actually transpired has been the case.
And this has made a lot of people money, hasn't it? But it's been ruled unlawful. And so essentially, people are looking for money back. They're looking for compensation.
Yeah, absolutely. In October 2024, the Court of Appeal came out and unanimously decided with the car finance claimants and awarded compensation to those claimants. So that's set a bit of a landmark judgment now for everyone. The FCA came out and said there's 31.7 million car finance agreements out there since 2007, and 99% of them are actually affected by this.
And in part, Lloyd's is exposed to this, isn't it? Because actually, not just the bank, because we're talking about the group here, but also it has got a kind of car finance arm, if you like, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lloyd's Bank own Black Horse, which is one of the biggest car finance lenders on the market. Now, Lloyd's are the first to break $1 billion that has been set aside for compensation. But we've also had, in the last couple of weeks, Santander have come out and announced $295 million. Close Brothers are up to $165 million that they've set aside. And Barclays have set aside, which is Clydesdale Financial Services, £90 million. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, Darren. We've got a lot of evidence here that we've done over the years in the courts that suggests that this could go as high as 100 billion when it's all done.
And this has been compared, isn't it, to their kind of personal protection kind of scandal, if you like, that we saw a couple of years ago that cost a hell of a lot of money. You seem to be suggesting that this could get a lot bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you look at a car, it's the second biggest purchase that most people make behind their house. It's a significant part of their life. They rely on it to get to work. They rely on it to go to shopping at supermarket. It's huge. And when you look at the car finance market, the vast majority of people that we're seeing have actually got about 2 to 3 cars that are eligible for a claim. So in regards to PPI, that was 53 billion was paid out, and it was actually credited with contributing around 3% to the GDP. We think that car finance could double that, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in April when this will be ultimately decided by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and just finally on that, you know, some analysts are saying for Lloyd's alone it could be 4 billion. You're leading into much higher numbers. For people watching who may have got caught up in this, when are they likely to see some money?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think everything's going to happen on April 1st, 2nd and 3rd in the Supreme Court, depending on if the Supreme Court follows the suit of the Court of Appeal, which was a unanimous decision. It'll be then up to the FCA to implement some form of redress scheme, and then clients can start to submit complaints. We're already accepting complaints, and we have done for the last 3 years. So it's a really interesting time, and I think I would advise anyone to get their complaint or claim in as soon as possible.
OK, Sam, really interesting stuff. Again, another story we need to keep across with that judgment in April. Sam Ward there, thank you. Now let's talk about chicken, because the fast food giant, once known as Kentucky Fried Chicken, is moving out of the state that it was named after. Founded by Colonel Sanders, of course, in 1952, KFC will now be based in Texas. And KFC, I didn't know this, apparently is the world's second largest restaurant chain, after McDonald's, but faces increasing competition on the high street from a string of new rivals, including Popeyes and Wingstop, that you may well have seen pop up on your high street or in a shopping centre near you. Let's speak to the consumer affairs journalist, Harry Wallop, who is with us. Very good afternoon, Harry, to you. Let's first of all talk just briefly about KFC. This is a business decision, isn't it, fundamentally, but they are, for the first time, leaving their home state.
Yes, that is a technicality, and it's done for tax reasons. And in fact, I have been to the home of Kentucky Fried Chicken in Kentucky, but actually the holding company, Yum Brands, has always been based in Dallas. So most of the big decisions were made in Dallas. It was obviously for historic and indeed for sentimental reasons they stayed in Kentucky, and obviously the original, the Corbin Sanders Cafe, the very first KFC, will still be in Kentucky. So I don't think loyalists should get too upset about this essentially tax-reducing move by the fast food chain.
And we'll still never find out those secret ingredients wherever it's based. But let's talk about, if we can, Harry, chicken, because we see food, and I was talking about salted caramel earlier. There was a real zeitgeist around that, wasn't there, 10 years ago? It does feel that we're in the era of fried chicken. I look at where I live in East London. Every month there seems to be a new fried chicken chain open up.
Yeah, that's right. So Meaningful Vision, who is a research company that specialise in restaurants, they pointed out that the restaurant market in the UK is falling. Simple cost of living crisis combined with all sorts of things like the rise in, national insurance for workers. But when it comes to fast food, that is increasing a little bit, 5%, but specifically fried chicken up 12%. The number of outlets. Fried chicken is unstoppable, and it's for a number of reasons, mostly economics. Chicken is very cheap. It's significantly cheaper than it used to be a generation or two ago. So you can, if you're a fast food chain, offer, some fried chicken, maybe just some wings for as little as, £1.50. It can become an after-school snack rather than a whole meal. And that makes it incredibly powerful when you're on the high street and you're trying to cater for as many people as possible.
And these aren't necessarily just, Harry, the kind of rip-offs that we see of KFC, LFC and AB whatever, all these weird names we see. These are big American brands now also invading the UK market. I talked about Wingstop, didn't I? Popeyes, Chick-fil-A, I think, is due to open a branch in the UK as well soon. These are, as I say, big players in the US now moving to the UK.
Yeah, and these are very slick. Wingstop, the UK arm of Wingstop, which has only been going a couple of years, they've got 58 outlets. They want to open another 20. Just before Christmas, that got sold to an American private equity company for £400 million. And Popeyes is also expanding very quickly. Both those chains reckon they can easily get 400 outlets in the UK. And they're slick. They're slick, they're modern. Wingstop say they're not really in the chicken business. The genius of chicken is that it's quite bland. You can do anything with it. So Popeye say they're in the flavour business. You go in there and you have a big array of different, spiciness that you can choose from. And that's one of the reasons, that people, like it. It's very popular with young kids. They play a very loud, curated set of music, which they change every month, decided by head office. So it's all part of, youth culture, as well as being cheap, cheerful, and let's face it, it's quite tasty.
Maybe I should say I'm in the flavours business. I quite like that brand they have there, Harry. Just finally on this, there'll be a lot of people very frustrated, though, who go, God, the last thing my high street needs is another fast food outlet or kind of fast-go restaurant, if you like, that's not necessarily the healthiest food in the world, let's be honest about it.
No, it's not healthy at all. Well, certainly compared with all sorts of other places. But of course, the choices are: do you want an empty site on your high street, or do you want someone in, providing a few jobs and offering a decent service? I mean, I think that the new American chains are pretty slick. They're they're opening in shopping centres and on pretty prominent sites. It's on the secondary locations that people have a real issue. With fried chicken and some of the antisocial behaviour that it can attract, because essentially it's filled the gap that a lot of things like sort of youth clubs, a lot of social spaces that just are not available now to teenagers in Britain, so they hang out in the fried chicken shop, and that comes with all the problems.
Harry, I don't know if you know, I was in a Wetherspoons yesterday up in Harrogate. We were talking about a whole load of things, but one of the things I noted, and I read your piece in the Times about breakfast and how things have shifted since COVID. Really fascinating that we're eating earlier in the evenings, but also eating more out, if you like, in the mornings.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. There's been a massive explosion from a small base, admittedly, for people eating out at breakfast time. It's a mixture of workmen who leaving the house early, builders, people working in construction, but also a lot of retired people who enjoy going out for breakfast rather than maybe going out for lunch or for dinner. And so Wetherspoons, pub chain, is now really big in the breakfast market, which seems very odd for a company that's essentially meant to be, or predominantly selling beer. Of course, Wetherspoons' best-selling drink is in fact tea and coffee because of the free refills. And interestingly, the fast food chains really gone big on it. So McDonald's, Greggs, and also Popeyes are offering these special breakfast meals because people are spending their money earlier in the day.
Yeah, I have to say, my favourite meal of the day, definitely a brunch, not going to lie. Let me just finally ask you this, though. If there was one food trend we should look out for, one thing in the restaurant trade, one thing that people you think may well happen in the year ahead, what do you reckon that is? What's the new zeitgeist, if you like?
Well, the new salted caramel is hot honey. So that's a flavour that you see an awful lot on supermarket shelves. It's kind of drizzled on pizzas and indeed on fried chicken. So you'll see it on the Popeyes menu. And that's kind of a big macro trend, which is an increase in protein. You'll see increasingly messages and labelling in the supermarket that this particular product is high in protein, which again is one of the secrets of chicken and one of the reasons why people have shifted to chicken so much out of pork and beef.
I am making a note, Harry, of hot honey. Hot honey.
It's a strange new term for essentially spicy honey. But yeah, it's the trendy thing. It's come from America, of course. And the slightly unusual thing is you put it on savoury food. So you're drizzling something sweet and spicy. And there is a term, spicy. So that's the thing. It's hot honey and you kind of, fried chicken, pizzas, whatever.
Love it, Harry. Appreciate your time this afternoon. Harry, well up there. Thank you very much indeed. OK, you're watching Business Live here on Sky News. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we'll be looking at the markets. The FTSE down more than 0.5% this afternoon. All the details after this break.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you. How are you feeling?
Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Conor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences.
How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute.
We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death.
Scotland has a shameful record, worse than England, the worst in Europe.
Why not just say you failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
free wherever you get your news.
It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me.
Sky News. The full story first.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks.
I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away? Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. Flying Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Very welcome back on this Thursday afternoon. Let's have a look at those markets in a bit more detail. Speak to Georgina Gregory, Global Equities Portfolio Manager at Newton Investment Management. Georgina, very good afternoon to you. Let's talk about Alibaba first, if we can. Its stocks, I think, up some 50% since the start of the year, and it's talking about aggressively investing in artificial intelligence.
Yeah, we've seen an absolute rally amongst the Chinese tech names year to date. And I mean, I think part of that is justified. If you look at the Western equivalents, they've been incredibly strong performers over the last couple of years. And China's been a market where people have been more reluctant to spend. I think since DeepSeek was announced a few weeks ago, I think there's the prospects of spend and the spend in Chinese tech has increased. So I think, that valuation discount is somewhat justified. But of course, it is the fundamentals that ultimately drive the share prices. So seeing Alibaba's results today, I think, was supportive of the share price. But yes, as you say, CapEx spend is certainly something that has increased across the board. It's something that I think in the US names, there's been a bit of criticism there in terms of these very large numbers and people trying to quantify sort of the return to be expected on there. And I think, as AI potentially gets cheaper with the likes of DeepSeek, potentially those return on investments can be higher. And, we've seen today with Alibaba, triple-digit growth in its AI-related products for the 6th quarter now, which is again very supportive of that debate.
Let's talk about another big tech company, of course, that is Apple, and they're announcing a kind of cut-price iPhone, if you like. What's the thought process there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Apple have struggled with their last couple of launches to really differentiate themselves and really get the consumer to justify buying that new upgrade. So, you can get a new camera, but really does the average consumer appreciate that difference enough? So I think this is quite a clever move from Amazon, from Apple, sorry, adding in AI technology, which is clearly the hype of the moment. If it can really bring efficacies that we all hope that AI can bring through a mobile phone concept that we use daily, then I imagine that could actually increase the appeal and boost Apple sales with this new product launch going forward.
And talk about expensive things. Let's end on Swiss watches. Apparently selling very well. Now, why is that? Because I thought the luxury market had been under a bit of pressure recently.
Yeah, luxury has been very much out of the limelight for the last couple of years as it's sort of normalised post that COVID boom. I don't think they're out of the limelight, they're out of the woods yet, but what we saw today was, as you say, the Swiss watch exports data, which turned positive for the first time this year. I think what is quite interesting, though, is there's a real bifurcation in the growth there. So the US really supported the growth number. It was up 16%, whereas China is still incredibly negative at minus 29%. So I don't think we're out of the woods there, but I think incrementally you're starting to see this aspirational US consumer come through, where previously the luxury market has been very much dominated by that rising middle class in China. Okay. So I think it's quite interesting that we might be getting a bit of a shift in the demand dynamics there, and yeah, today's data is quite supportive of that.
Georgina, great stuff as always. Thank you very much indeed, Georgina Gregory there. Thank you. That is it from me on Business Live for this afternoon. Back, of course, at 11:30 tomorrow morning. Up next, it's the News Hour with Mark Austin, including more on why the Broccoli family have given up the James Bond franchise. Bye-bye.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Sky News, the full story first.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way.
I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.